Friends, family, fans, welcome back to another episode of Back Nine Bets, episode 7, Maximum Pain. I've got one of my good friends, colleagues, mentors, the whole shebang over here, Mr. Joe Nicely. How the heck are you, sir?
I am doing great, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm always typically doing good. Could always be better, especially after last week. The title of the pod is Maximum Pain. We'll get into the nitty gritties of it, but having Keegan Bradley somehow be the guy that I was rooting for instead of Tony Finau last week was rough, and I wasn't even near a TV, so it was just kind of chaos trying to stay up to date with the shot tracker, and eventually made it to the ice hockey rink and was trying to watch a TV clear across the rink, like in a box. I was watching the goal from across the ice rink, and I couldn't quite see what Keegan got up to on 18, and turns out Max was just a savage as always, and
Yeah.
I've been betting the guy. I've bet him religiously every single time he hasn't won. So it's a tough week for me from a betting perspective. I had some good stuff go on with some showdown. Almost took down a little $3 three entry max, but it was fun. It
Yeah.
was a it
Saw
was an
that.
interesting week. Yeah, with all of that jazz. The course rotations and
Nice one.
everything like that can really make it interesting. So yeah, I know we were just chatting now. You had a bit of a roughie. We were the guys that let you down last week.
Oh, lost you for a second, buddy.
We were the guys that let you down last week. I know we were mentioning in the studio. You had a bit of a rough one.
Yeah, it was a rough one, man. It was one of those weeks where I really wanted to get John Rahm in my builds,
Mm.
and to do that, you had to make some sacrifices, which kind of made for some thin roster construction. So unfortunately, I was victim to that. Just trying to jam John Rahm in there when maybe taking a more balanced approach would have been better. Probably would have ended up on a guy like Max. I know you talked about Max a lot on my podcast last week. I was kind of
Yeah,
hoping maybe you had a little late ad with Max or something, but he was a great play, man. Anytime he's on a tough course, especially in the state of California,
yeah,
I mean, he's a guy we probably got to look at pretty seriously.
absolutely. I had him in my big lineups, and helped me just kind of make my money back at the end of the week. In that
Yeah.
$18, $10, 18 max $10 thing, and he was great. Just cheap, affordable, very popular. But I think mentioning John Rahm, we did discuss last week. Like I had the same situation at Mexico where he's the smash play at the top of the board and still kind of paid off. He didn't win it, but he was still up there in the top 10, even though he had one of the worst Sundays he could have imagined. But the rest that roster construction is just so difficult, and when you got a guy that's 11-6, it's tough to find those guys that are going to sneak through for you. So I kind
Yeah.
of that was my philosophy behind all of it, and I don't know. You live and you learn. Do you think you'd, if you did have the opportunity to go again, knowing, okay, say John Rahm finished T5, do you think you would have built with John again, or would you have gone more balanced?
Probably not. Probably. I mean, when you make a play like that, a guy with that high salary and that high ownership, you're really looking for a win. I mean,
Yeah.
you're really rostering him with the belief that he's going to win. That's where I was last week. I really thought he had a terrific chance to win the tournament. Probably asking a lot. Seemed like he just kind of ran out of gas there in the final round,
Yeah.
and maybe that's just from when very recently. Maybe just kind of ran out of juice there. But at the
All right. I'm gonna just keep speaking over you until you come back, because I can't hear you from my side. So I don't know if that's me or if that's you, but we'll keep rolling
there, mine.
until, yeah, I can hear you now. There we go.
Okay, man.
All right.
Sorry, I'm kind of
Oh,
cutting in and out or something. But
it's
yeah, to
typically
answer
what
your
happens when
question,
you get Rom involved. Things don't quite function the way they should. Speaking about Tony Finau, but yeah, go ahead. Keep going with your Rom take there.
yeah, you just make that play when you think the guy's going to win the golf tournament. Basically, you know, with that price and ownership, that's what you're hoping for there. That's what I was hoping for there. And, you know, honestly, not a lot of surprises. I mean, guys we thought would play well, played well. Rom played well, just didn't win the tournament. Tony Finau played really well. I think a lot of us kind of on the RB staff like Tony. Max Homa was a great play. Jason Day played well. I mean, a lot of the guys that, you know, we talked about Keegan a little bit on my pod last week. You were on, we talked about Keegan. So a lot of the guys we thought would play well did play well. But it was one of those weeks where it was a really top heavy salary scale on DraftKings, and you can't play everybody.
Yeah.
So you do have to make some decisions, and that particular board really thinned out kind of as you moved down last week. I'm wanting to say below 8K. You know, things really thinned out. You felt like you were taking chances. You felt like you were playing some risky plays, and so it was just one of those kind of weird weeks where, you know, roster builds didn't really shake out the way maybe we'd want.
Yeah, no, I definitely think it was a really interesting
Can't hear
week
you,
from
Byron.
a roster construction standpoint because of the pricing that they did hit us with John at 11.6. And before we get into some more stuff, we just have to mention this is a Rotoballer presented podcast that we are a fan of, and this is the first time I've had a Rotoballer colleague on the show with me, which is kind of fun. And if you are not already a Rotoballer subscriber, it is the time now. I know me and Spence haven't necessarily been cooking like we typically capable of, but you know, if you want to take a little spin zone action, it means the law of averages are coming on, and we are going to be hitting some winners here soon. So get on board with us at rotoballer.com/radio and use code Maniac for another 10% off there. We got all the different packages. We're doing some great stuff. We're getting a lot of great people on board. The Discord's starting to pop. We had one guy yelling at me in the Discord today because I had I used the at everyone, which I'm not a Discord kind of guy. I'm typically just trying to learn my way around the Discord etiquette, and I added everybody today, and it kind of set someone off. So apologies to that person, but I'm learning my way around the Discord. So it's been fun, and everyone in there helped him try and figure out his notifications and stuff. So the Discord's popping. All our articles I feel like our articles are going great, you know, and it's just a great team we're building over at Rotoballer, right?
Yeah. The Discord's really fun. Been really fun. That's been a new addition this year, and having a lot of fun with that. But yeah, I'm still kind of learning my way around there too.
Yeah.
But it has been a fun addition. I think a lot of our subscribers are really enjoying that. Getting to talk to you and Spencer kind of throughout the week in the tournament. It's been a really great feature, and you guys are going to get it going. You just need a little more data, a few more stats to pop in the old computers, and by the time the Masters rolls around, you boys will be rolling.
Oh yeah, I'm not worried about it. I think I took a look at my track record and figured out that it's typically the vibe. You know, I had 1 or 2 bad weeks in the fall, and I think I need to learn my lesson from that and kind of go easy early on, and then wait until we get enough rounds in for everyone to start really letting the model shine. You know, I think we'll let the Maniac take over in the fall of 2023 a little bit, which is a scary proposition, but we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I think one thing I do want to mention before we kind of get on into the general evergreen portion of this conversation I want to have with you, Joe, is Jon Rahm, when he plays with other guys in, you know, pairings, it can cause issues. I remember speaking about every time Scotty Scheffler missed his first 2 cuts of last year was playing with Jon Rahm. Tony Finau played with Jon Rahm for 3 straight rounds. All 3 of those rounds he played with Jon Rahm was not the minus 80 shot in the round he didn't play with Jon Rahm. So it's just this really weird dynamic that Justin Thomas was all over the place the second day. It's just this, they call him, I think the no laying up boys call him the buoy. You can't sink him, but he pretty much sinks everyone that plays with him, right? It's just, he's just this toxic, uncapsizable type thing that bobs around in the middle of nowhere and just dishes off, like nothing happens to him because all the bullets are like deflecting off of him onto everyone else, kind of thing. So do you have a type of a take on Jon Rahm and how he is as a playing partner? I know Colin and Max were vibing, and it's something I'm definitely going to look into going forward with pairings, because that can, when you're playing with a random 3 ball or you're playing with your buddies, the type of golf is different that you produce. And I think professionals, they're also human. So
Yeah.
it's interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Honestly, not something I've given a lot of thought to. We've always kind of talked about and put a little bit of weight on the kind of the Tiger effect, right? When guys are paired with Tiger, we know that that's kind of an atmosphere that's unlike any other, really. And there's probably a little bit of that with Rom. I mean, you're probably getting bigger crowds than normal for some of these guys that are paired with him in the early rounds. Of course, in the later rounds, there's a ton of pressure there, and we know he's an emotional player, and guys can react to that and kind of vibe off that differently. You mentioned a guy like Scotty Scheffler. I think last year at the PGA, there were some struggles there. Rom was struggling, obviously frustrated. So, Scheffler, a guy kind of a easygoing, laid back guy, might not. Rom's emotion.
Yeah. You're cutting out again on me, so I'll just take over until you get back. But I
Yeah,
think
you
you
got
kind
me
of,
now, man.
yep, we good. It's just, it
Sorry.
seems like a bit of a spotty situation on our side. But
Yeah, we've had horrible weather here. I guess it must be impacting the Wi-Fi.
yeah,
Sorry
and
about
it typically happens every time we speak about John Rahm. So maybe we'll just kind of get off that topic and keep moving on with other things, because I do think that he does impact how people play, and it's like you said, he's kind of a very negative person. So on the golf course, he's a very positive and analytical person, when you interview him and stuff, but it's just,
that. Yeah.
And one more thing about him before we move on is I do believe he's also built to chase. That's his thing. He did that to Colin. He chased him down, went nuclear when he was missing the cut and wasn't in the mix to win the tournament. He went nuclear to kind of go 5-under on those final 5 holes to get himself right up the leaderboard. Then he was in the final pairing, Joe, and man, he had some really bad holes and some really bad shots, So it kind of is testament to how golf can be so lucky. If you play too good for the first 3 rounds, Sam Ryder is a perfect example of this. I think if Sam Ryder was just hanging around the top of that leaderboard, there's a chance he probably lands up winning that tournament, or
Yeah.
the chances of him winning the tournament are better than having entered the. It's so difficult to close it out. I think if you got a person you're chasing down, you can be aggressive, that you got really nothing to lose. It's tricky. So it's gonna definitely play a part, and we'll see a lot of that this week at Pebble, where there's a 3-course rotation, and some guy goes and plays the easy golf course, and out of nowhere just comes out on the other side of the tunnel, and he's got a 3-shot lead going into the final round. So I think it's definitely something we can chat about going into it. But before we get there, I'm kind of just curious. I wanted you on in particular because I know your main thing is DFS, and your signature piece is, I guess the free article is the horse for the course, and then you got your core 4, which I think are 2 very significant ways that you approach DFS, because you are a guy that I believe uses course history a lot in your research process, and also then kind of build your lineups around a unique 4 people. So if you want to just kind of break down your horse for the course and how you go about using that to bolster your lineups, and then we can chat about the core 4 after.
And looks like I'm gone again.
No, you're good. We'll hang in there. We're doing good.
All right, man. Yeah, course history based article. It's not my end all be all, but it's a place that I really like to start the week. I kind of take a look at the field when the field comes out. Take a look at the course. And it's just a good place to kind of, for me anyway, it's just a good place to kind of kick off my research. More so than even trying to identify specific, players. I'm looking at player types. Guys that have played well in that at a certain course in the past. Are they long off the tee? Are they accurate off the tee? Are they great ball strikers? Good scramblers. It kind of helps you to narrow down your field of view for guys you're looking for going forward for the week. And then when we do get into specific players, which I write up, 5-6 guys every week that have played well on this week's course. I believe it does. I'm willing to lend a little more credence to course history than a lot of guys are. A lot of the more statistical based guys, kind of like yourself. I'll probably weigh course history a little stronger than you will, but I don't think it's the end all be all. Obviously, I'm looking for a really nice blend of course history and recent form that I can kind of rely on. So that's just kind of a good starting point for me is to get a feel for what's worked on a golf course in the past and how can I translate that into guys that are going to play well in the coming week.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect segue for me to tee up what I'd kind of try and do with my statistical side of things is create the course history with the stats. What does
Yeah.
this course typically demand from these guys that have played well, and then go from there. And like I have 0 distance in my model this week, which is exactly kind of what you're going to look for from guys that have played well. Yeah, I mean Spieth has played well, but he doesn't. He breaks models. He's just. I have to put in official World Golf ranking points for Spieth because if I don't have those in there, he's all the way down the model, and it doesn't take into account his Spiethness. I can't figure out how to get his. He's always a fade for me from my model's perspective, but whenever I'm watching him and whenever I'm fading him, it's like I'm just tilting my face off because he's just hitting these lob shots over trees and sticking them to 2 feet or even in, and he's just so sensational when it comes to that kind of thing. So trying to just, like you said earlier, just get my model to kind of sync up with what the course does. And also at a venue like this or Torrey, I'm definitely going to lean on course history a lot more than I typically do in other courses like the Amex or things like that. So it's going to be quite interesting and kind of looking forward to a fun week with the course history side of things because we do have 3 different courses, but we'll get into that towards the end of the show. Yeah. And speaking of your core 4, you got your core 4 that you write about at Rotoballer. And how many lineups do you typically kind of throw out there each week, and how do you use those core 4 guys? Like chat to me a little bit about how you put your rosters together and how you decide how much you want to use a guy and which combination of guys you want to use and how you go about that leading up to
Yeah, I've kind of changed over the years. Went from strictly, kind of single entry stuff years ago to there for a couple years dabbling in, max entering stuff, building tons of lineups. And now I've kind of settled in the middle. So I usually kind of focus on higher dollar single entry stuff or 3 max stuff. And for the majors, I'll still, tackle the GP, but kind of how I use my core. And I say this every week. It's more of that too. I want to build around, when building multiple lineups, I want to build lineups. Those are the 4 guys I want to have my most exposure to.
Okay.
So, people will kind of use the article differently. And that's fine. A lot of times you can just straight line it and use those 4 guys in the lineup, but not always. For me personally, that's the guys I'm going to have the most exposure to for the week.
Yeah. No, that's something that I've tried to learn and adapt to and figure out in this space because I used to do 40 lineups and each week and trying to win a GPP. And that just didn't seem like it was working out for me that well. And I decided I'm going to start going because eventually I was hopefully going to hit one, but it just takes everything to go so right in order to hit one of those $15,000 entry competitions, right? And even if you finish inside the top 5, you're still not nearly making as much money as you should in those big events. And I do think the payout structure for like a single entry and for a 3 entry is definitely way more feasible. I think you can get away with a little more inferior lineup build in those kind of contests, and it's something I've definitely gone into. And then I'm using my model to strictly build like I'm entering the 20 entry max competitions now, but just one of them for $1 lineup, and really just going like ultra aggressive. I'm using my model as like a leverage tool and just putting in some wild and wacky lineups in order to try and figure out exactly how I want to go about winning that thing, but focusing more on like the handball type stuff for single entries and 3 entries, which I think you've kind of alluded to. And I think that's a perfect sweet spot for most people that, want to dabble in DFS.
Yeah. I mean, different people have different personality types, different, different amounts they're comfortable playing with, different risk tolerances. So, everybody, I would encourage folks to just try some different things, see what works for you, see what you're comfortable with. I kind of view the core, building around the core concept as kind of like stacking in NFL DFS, which a lot of people play fantasy football, DraftKings football. So they probably understand that concept. You're trying to, there's less things you have to get right when you build around that core. When you do hit on your core, just like when you hit on a stack on an NFL slate, when you get that right and you've got a lot of different pieces revolved around that, then some really cool things can happen for you. Obviously, it's tough. It's not always going to work, but it is a concept that I've had some success with building around the core. Obviously, building around stacks in football. So that's if you kind of want to equate it to something, I would equate it to stacking in NFL DFS.
Yeah, and I like you just said there with the core is in that 3 entry showdown piece that I came second. I basically made the same as the guy that came first because I had another lineup that came fourth that was basically the same guys, but just 1 or 2 obviously different alternate players in there to kind of figure it out a little bit, which is exciting because if you have a great week, and that's what you got to remind yourself about when you're doing that core, if it fails, you're in trouble, like that's going to be a quick, easy week for you and you're out of there. But when it is hitting and it's firing on all cylinders, that core 4 it's exactly where you want to find yourself. And it's a good, I do think that's a good way to go about building lineups too. So yeah, it's really interesting. And it's just so weird because I'm trying to just do this pod to kind of get people to realize that DFS isn't a one size fits all. Well, it is a one size fits all, but you can wear different clothes, you can wear a different hat, like you can do all sorts of different things. And I'm trying to get different, like having Eric on last week. He's an optimizer guy. So I've gone from him, which is more like my kind of style, to you, which is a little more feel-based, artsy, I think a lot less data-driven decisions, right?
Yeah. Eric, man, he's a friend, and I really respect what he does. I mean, he'll make he'd probably tell you he'll make 50 unique lineups with very little concern for a core. He's trying to optimize things, trying to take advantage of what his statistics are telling him, and I definitely respect that. It's a way to go, and I would kind of ask folks what's your goal. Is your goal to consistently win money week in, week out? Is your goal to have just have fun? You're throwing 1 or 2 lineups in the Millie Maker, a huge prize.
Mm-hmm.
There are no right or wrong answers. I think it comes down to the individual and kind of what your goals are and what you're comfortable having at stake every week. So everyone should take. I have my process. You have yours. Guys like Eric have theirs, and each can find success in their own process.
Exactly, and I think I love having you on, Joe, because you're so wisdomous and elegant with your words. And even though you might have ditched out every now and then on the Wi-Fi there, I think we still know exactly what you're talking about because
the Wi-Fi sucks this week.
Oh yeah, but it's okay. We're gonna get through it. It's kind of like the contest we go into this week. We got 3 different courses, the whole shebang. But
yeah, we're in the rotation pro-am portion of the show right now.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly where we're at. And just to summarize what you said,
circling back around the course history in a tournament like this, Byron. Not all these guys like pro-ams. It's something I've noticed. This week specifically, this is thankfully is the last of the kind of the pro-ams, but we had the Amex couple. And these things just aren't for everybody, man. And I think that's probably one reason why we're seeing kind of this field continually declining year in, year out. 6+ hour rounds for 3 days for sure. It's just tough, man. And I just don't think it's for all these pros. No, not everybody loves this format. So something else to consider as well.
Yeah. And, you're watching these amateurs hitting balls in Pebble Beach is no walk in the park, right? If you hit an errant shot around Pebble, these pros make it look good because they're so in control of their ball. But if you got, Luke Bryan's a terrible example, but what's his name? Bill Murray out here just hitting hosel rockets and slices into the bushes. It's unless he's going to be dropping instantly, it's rough, and just 6 hours of nonstop bad shots and people walking on your line. Like these celebrities don't know what golf etiquette is. And it's just, it's too much for me. So
yeah,
let's transition into that, because when it comes to these kinds of events, I've got my outright card. I feel like I'm okay with betting outrights in a field like this, because you're betting on a guy's upside and whatever. But when I come to betting top 20s and matchups, I need consistency. I need certainty. I'm a data-driven, model-based betting guy. And when it comes to having these jabronis alongside you, I just don't trust what's going to happen is what the model is telling me is going to happen. And I won't be betting top 20s and matchups this week because it just doesn't, I don't think I've had success with it in the past. And there's too much variables. There's far too many variables involved. But when it comes to DFS, I'm totally I fly a little more maniac than I am when I'm, betting. And I feel like there's a definite opportunity to kind of take advantage of everyone feeling like maybe you got that little sentiment of uncertainty and, like this is a weird event, but there's opportunity, amongst this chaos. And is there a certain way you kind of trying to approach a 3-course rotation? Is there a certain way you're trying to build lineups knowing that you're going to have 3 guaranteed rounds from your players, unless you have someone like me that I had John Huh. We didn't land up playing any of his 3 rounds in my 30% of my lineups a while ago. What are you rolling out for the week when you have? Is it any different to a normal week?
Yeah, you mentioned all the variables, man, and there are so many in this tournament in particular. Because we've got the 3-course rotation, we've got the pro-am format, we've got the 54-hole cut, we've got the wind, which can be a huge factor on this complex of courses. So there are so many variables this week. Anytime there's kind of a lot of uncertainty out there, I want to be really aggressive with DFS bills, willing to take more chances than normal. Because you kind of feel like it's one of those weeks where a lot of things can happen. We've seen kind of the favorites play well in this event, but we've also seen some kind of long shot guys. Tom Hoagie last year. I don't know where we want to rank him as a long shot, but we've seen guys, a Ted Potter Jr. a few years ago, Nick Taylor. We've seen some of these guys kind of come out of nowhere and win this event, but we've also saw guys we thought would play well. Daniel Berger last year, Patrick Cantlay for several years, Jordan Spieth, the guy we can talk about this week. And we've seen kind of a mixture of long shots and favorites. So I think it's one of those weeks where you can go off the board a little bit. You do have those 3 guaranteed rounds. You don't know what the weather's going to do, how it can change on these golf courses and affect things later on in the tournament. So to answer your question, I'm going to be a little bit more aggressive with roster construction this week versus, like what we saw last week at Torrey.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And I think, there's a lot of obviously comparisons you can make with the Amex, but I think this is even more volatile than that because we've got these celebrities versus just these amateurs just trying to get out of the way. These celebrities want the limelight. They want to be in the mix. They want to do all this stuff. Bill Murray is going to be, he's like an ultimate. If my guy's playing with Bill Murray, I want nothing to do with that golfer this week. But like you mentioned, the wind. We got wind involved here versus the Amex, which was just kind of 3 easy courses that we had. The one stadium course that was a little more difficult that provided that volatility. But I think the wind in particular can really, really impact how things shake out, and that definitely is a reason you should be aggressive. I think this week is anything can happen, right? Any absolutely thing can happen, and it's just going to be a crazy week. And I haven't even, we've been grinding away, so I haven't really even had a look at the slate that much. I don't know how much you've taken a peek, but if you want to start, we can start rolling through just a few names and kind of discussing how you want to approach. Don't have to go through every single name, just kind of have a lean here, have a lean there, kind of talk me through what you're thinking this week.
Yeah, we're talking about variables, Byron, and POA is another one that we can bring up, man. It's the most unpredictable of surfaces. Really inconsistent. That's why we see a lot of guys struggling to make these 5 to 10 footers with regularity here. These greens are tiny this week. So those are a couple more variables that we can toss in with everything else we've got going on in this event. But there are some kind of tried and true Pebble guys. Jordan Spieth is kind of going to be the one that pops up for me first, just because of the course history, just because of kind of his skill set. In the Horse for the Course article this week, I liken it to kind of giving a great artist your favorite paintbrush. Golfing brain. So he's a terrific wind player, obviously from Texas. So this is just an environment that I want to gravitate towards Spieth. His calendar year usually starts at Pebble. He's won this event, has top 3s in each of the last 2 years. So if I have a lean towards the top, it would be Jordan Spieth. Mab McNeely's another guy that I'm kind of circling. Used to actually live off the 15th green at Pebble Beach. So he's very, very familiar with this environment, with these golf courses, coming off his best season as a pro, and playing his best golf since turning pro. So those are the 2 guys. If I'm starting up at the top from a DFS perspective, those are certainly the 2 guys that I'm circling this week, Jordan and Mab McNeely.
Yeah, no, I love that because it's more of a certainty to know that you're going to have these guys that are playing a course that they've played and familiar with, especially in this chaos, right? That's the thing. Has Vic ever, I guess he won his US amateur or whatever here a while back, but what Victor Hovland is that? Is he the same guy that played 6 years ago, or is he someone that's going to, how good was he chipping when he was an amateur? Is he a worse chipper now than he was back then? Or, I mean, it's a really perplexing thing for me this week with Victor.
Yeah, it's tough with Vic because he's such a great ball striker, which is obviously something we want to target here. You have to hit fairways in this event. The greens are tiny, so we want great iron players, which he certainly is. The POA kind of mutes putting advantage a little bit, which works in Vic's favor. But yeah, man, the scrambling is a concern, especially on this layout. But we saw him play really well in the U.S. Open here a few years ago when it was at Pebble.
Okay.
So that's something we can take into account as well. Obviously, he's the class of this field in that top 2 or 3, kind of the class guys in this field. So I mean, you have to give Vic kind of a look there. Same with Matt Fitzpatrick. I mean, I would rank those 2 along with Spieth kind of head and shoulders above the next closest guys.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think if you're looking for like a safer play, Fitzy's your guy, especially if it gets windy and blowy and all that jazz. I'm just looking at him here, and I've started incorporating Joe into my process for DFS is a safety plus upside. Yep. What's your percentage of made cuts, and how many top 10s are you making? And he's sitting at 131% total for those 2 stats, which is 24% more than Victor Hovland, right? So he's 50% of his starts Fitzy on the tour is top 10ing. So he's out there just making top 10 after top 10. But the only tournament he's won was one of the toughest ones ever, and that's the US, right? And that's the thing. Is he going to do it again here? He's a really interesting character because from like me and Spencer's perspective, he never really grades out that well because his irons just really aren't super precise. I think he's a very conservative type of a golfer. That's why I think he plays those difficult courses well. He kind of plays away from the pins and makes his pars and birdies that way versus constantly firing at them like Vic and Spieth do, kind of thing. So we've got two very different types of golfers up in this 10K range, which is very intriguing. And then you got Tom Hoge, who's not anywhere near the quality of those other three guys.
Yeah,
but
I mean, people term it different ways. I kind of put it in terms of floor and ceiling. You know, what's a guy's DFS floor? What's a guy's DFS ceiling? So yeah, I know exactly where you're coming from there. Obviously, you know, PGA DFS, we want all our guys through to make the cut. So you're looking for some level of consistency, some level of safety, but you know, what level of upside are we giving up there? That's always a consideration. Maverick McNeely's played really well, but he's not won a golf tournament yet in his career. Right. So, you know, Tom Hoge showed in this event last year, he's got tournament winning upside, but that's his only win. So, you know, the trouble this week is things just really get ugly quickly as we move below 10K. If we're talking DraftKings, things are rough, man. I mean, we've got a Justin Rose and a Matt Kuchar in the mid 9Ks,
$9,400 for Matt Kuchar and Justin Rose.
Yeah, and Andrew Putnam, a guy that I played a lot this year, 9,700. So I mean, this is what we're talking about when I'm talking about an aggressive lineup approach this week. You know, I would much rather grab a 10-1 Matt Fitzpatrick, a 10-3 Vic Hovland versus a $9,800 Seamus. I just think they're a different class of player. And I'd rather kind of take my gamble towards the bottom of the board rather than trying to play an $8,100 Trey Mullinax. I mean, just to kind of be hopping around and throwing some names out there.
Yeah.
So it just feels like a week to me to be aggressive, lock in guys that you feel really good about because we're not getting any price breaks this week. They're very few and far between on this slate just because of the overall weakness of this field.
Yes, that's a great point, Joe, is the fact you're looking at a $9,000 Joel Damon who, if you look at his last three starts, kind of fits that price tag, but also he hasn't played golf for about 3 months. So it's really interesting. And I've got Matt Kuchar third in my model. I thought I had to do some double checks and double takes to make sure that everything was going right. But old Matt's ball striking the crap out of it right now. His irons are doing some good stuff. And it's a really interesting, he's fifth in this field in ball striking, fifth in approach. And we've got Vic and Spieth and Hoagie and those boys. So he's having a late career bloom. Yeah. It's kind of really intriguing to see old Matty because we know what his short game. I mean, if there's anyone that I'm willing to bet my life on to get me up and down from pretty much anywhere, that's not Spieth, I'd go with Kuchar. You know, I just feel like he suits this course so well, but from a course history perspective, and we've seen, I think he's going to be bringing the same game to this venue again. And when he was playing his better golf back in like probably 5-10 years ago, he still wasn't doing that great around this venue. So I'm kind of concerned that my model's leading me astray with him a little bit. There's a little too much momentum from the previous rounds. But, you know, like when we went to Sony, I was on him because he's got great course history, and he's a guy that is a course history thoroughbred, right? He plays well at certain spots that you can tell when he's going to play well.
Yeah, I think I hear exactly where you're coming from with Kuchar. I think that kind of circles back around to what we touched on a minute ago, floor versus ceiling. The floor is probably pretty solid. We know he's an experienced vet. career starts. At Pebble, he's got 1 top 10. So what's the upside that we're really looking for to Cooch? I mean, obviously he's a talented guy, been around the game a long time. Could go out and play really well, even win this event. We've seen veterans play well here.
Yeah.
Phil Mickelson won this event a couple of years ago, for crying out loud. So
Right.
it's certainly possible for these experienced guys that know their way around to go out here and play well. But that's an argument I would make. Is the upside really there at 9,400?
Yeah. And I think I'm going to have to wait and see what people think of Matt Kuchar this week, because I think that's going to definitely impact. I'm not going to play him if he's mega chalk, and I don't see him going that way, especially with Mav up there and Joel beneath him. I think a lot of people are going to like Joel at 9K this week, and it makes a lot of sense, right? He's providing that same floor as what a Cooch does, basically, but with a different skill set.
Yeah, and I think kind of my initial thoughts of lingering towards the very on as the week progresses. And I don't hate trying to get a little contrarian spots this week either, due to all those variables we talked about.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and it's going to be. Are you okay? So something I also was checking out, and it's something I'm dabbling with now, is using approach metrics for off the tee. Like I threw a few extra percent into my model for guys that are really good from 225 to 250. So I feel like at this golf course, that's a shot that you're going to see off the tee a lot. And these guys are going to be hitting 3 irons and hybrids and 3 woods using those proximity buckets, which I'm interested in to see a comparison between like a Kurt Kitayama. I think everyone will look at his accuracy off the tee. Everyone will look at kind of he's a big bomber with the driver. But if you take a look at his long iron play, it's also really good. And if he's hitting a 3 iron as far as Russell Knox is hitting his 3 wood, or who knows, Cooch is hitting a 3 wood out there and Kurt's out there piping a 3 iron, they're still going to be in the same spot. And then you can figure out what's going on with approach from there. And Spencer and I were chatting earlier today, and we did mention that it's a second shot golf course, because these guys are good enough to, you just got to avoid those blow ups where you can like go way astray and hit into the canyon kind of thing. So are you willing to lean on a few guys that might necessarily not fit the mold this week? Or
yeah, it's easy to get lost in the woods really quickly when you start diving into the minutia of stuff, statistics. But this is a golf course where we want to look at driving accuracy, but we also need to take into account a lot of these guys are going to be hitting less than driver. For a lot of the week. So, what does that really tell us? What does that statistic really tell us? Driving accuracy, hitting less than driver this week. They're going to be hitting less than driver quite often, which is one reason that's led to a lot of success here for Jordan Spieth. He doesn't have so I hear where you're coming from for sure. Going to get lost in that minutia, especially when we're talking about this golf course, which is just so short.
Yeah.
Be looking at proximity, trying to dial in on some certain ranges from that.
What, on approach?
Yeah, on approach. There's some really nice buckets in your 10 questions article. I would definitely, point folks to go look at that. Go to rotoballer.com and check out Byron's 10 questions. It's kind of a first look, an article we really love, and there's some great things in there this week. So I would direct folks to your article, big guy. I think you hit a home run on this one this week.
Yeah, I think so too. And I'll be doing the stat buffet this evening too, which is DK took a little too long to get their pricing out, and I just got caught up in the afternoon. But we'll get that out this evening, and it's gonna take a look at those 10 questions in a little more deeper thing and really check those guys from those proximity buckets. So it's going to be interesting week, and I'm looking forward to it a lot. Yeah. Go ahead.
100 to 150 yards, right? I mean, that's our big bucket this week.
Mm-hmm. And there's guys that are, you can tell right away. You know, I think like a Nate Lashley is a guy that I highlighted. I think he's one of my outrights this week, and he's exceptional from that 125-yard range. So,
yeah, had an opportunity to win this golf tournament a couple years ago. I just had a horrible final round. So that's another thing when you start digging into course history. The final result might not be great, but where were these guys sitting? After 36 holes, after 54 holes, did one bad round kind of derail their week? So that's something you can kind of take advantage of. Go look at round by round scores instead of just final results. Is something I like to advise people to do.
I love that. That's a great idea, because if you take a look at Seamus from last year, there's no. You wouldn't believe finishing T9 that he was 16 under par through 2 rounds. That's incredible. Yeah. And then finished 13 for the week.
Yeah, he was blowing this field away last year. So same with Lashley. I think I don't know where he ended up finishing that year, but he certainly fell. Yeah. I think he ended up with a T5, but he was right there in contention to win this thing the whole way. And I think he like 4-putted a hole that year. So there's always these little random things that you can come across, and depending on how serious you want to take your prep, if you have the time or the inclination, I definitely recommend to folks to kind of dive in, pull up each year, look at everybody's 4-round scores, kind of round by round, and you'll kind of get an idea of how they played the event versus just looking at their finishing position.
That's a good idea, Joe. I think that's also an interesting thing I might add to maybe my stat buffet or something, and just see who's done well through the first 3 rounds at these venues, right? Because that final round it's a crapshoot, and like we said, if you get lonely at the top there on the final round, your game ain't the same, and you can be anybody in the world. And we've seen Colin and Johnny do that in like back-to-back weeks pretty much, and it's interesting. So yeah, is there any other guys you want to like let the people know? What were you kind of eyeing down for some cheapos? Or
I've seen a lot of people talking about David Lipsky this week. Mm-hmm. I think you might have some interest there. I'm not going to speak for you, but I've seen a lot of people talk about Lipsky. Nick Taylor's a guy you'll probably hear. He was in my Horse for the Course article this week. Has played exceptionally well at Pebble over the years. Former winner here, and he's a guy that has those spike weeks. Those we talk about floor versus ceiling. He's the guy that has a random spike top 5. I believe he had a T7 already this year at Sony. Had a top 10 during the fall, maybe a couple of top 10s during the fall swing, but he's a guy that can, spike a random top 10 for you. That's what we're looking for this week. Scotty Stallings, he's a guy that I always bring up when we start talking about the caliber of this field. Scott Stallings at 7,900, maybe the recent form hasn't been there, but we've seen him play a lot of really good golf, and we've seen him play a lot of really good golf on the West Coast. So he's a guy that pops for me. Davis Riley's a player that's really talented. So, Will Gordon has been cruel to me this year, but, he's a guy that I'm willing to look at just because he's talented, and he's $7,600 in a field of this caliber. Yes. So, I think there are a lot of ways, kind of as the week progresses. Bo Hostler's another guy. Now you got me just throwing guys out there, Byron. Once I start, I can't stop. Guys I like. So Bo Hostler's another guy that we've seen play well here. He had a real chance to win this golf tournament last year as well. I think he ended up 3rd place, but there's another guy that was kind of the victim of a bad round last year. So there's some ways to go. There's some ways to go. Ben Hahn's flashed some good golf this year, or Troy Merritt. Has great course history. So, there's some guys that we can look at as we get down in this salary scale that make it possible to pay up for some of your favorites up the top.
Absolutely. I'll just throw one more name out there that I want to chat about is Brendan Todd is sitting at $7,900, and and just everything about he was sitting at 70-1. I think Spencer's got an outright on him, but I was looking at that, and I was just like, I love everything about him, and logically and practically everything about his game like translates perfectly to this golf course. But we haven't seen a lot of Brendan Todd success at Pebble, although it should make a lot of sense that he should succeed here. But he's a safe-ish play, I think, at a course like this. He's going to be one of those guys at $7,900 that should make the cut for you at a venue like this. So I don't know, how does he deal with pro-ams and crap? But it's interesting.
Yeah, I think it's one of those guys where all the pieces fit, but the results haven't been great. And for me on Brendan Todd, it comes back to he's such an excellent putter. That's where he gains a lot of his advantage, is by being an excellent putter. And man, I just think this POA just really, really hinders that advantage for some of these guys. He's not a terrific POA putter, one of his worst surfaces. And we've seen these kind of really good ball strikers, maybe a little bit lesser putters, play well on POA and play well on Paspalum greens when we see those. And so we've also got the wind conditions. Does he love the wind? But for Todd, for me, it's a POA thing. Is kind of the line I fall in anyway.
Yeah. Then that's it. I mean, he's one of the best guys from when it comes to putting, and like you said, it's just they're going to be finding themselves on these 10 to 15 footers that they typically have extreme confidence on. But then you've seen these guys, like you said, Nate Lashley, 4-jack from like 9 feet or whatever. You just out of nowhere, it can just happen.
Yeah.
And if you're in that final pairing and everyone's been trotting over those greens, it's something, man. So yeah, embrace that volatility. I think you can really roll out a team no putt type vibe this week. You never know who's gonna. A bad putter could hit bad enough putts that they go in on a course like this where he's misreading the greens enough that it goes in. I know that sounds very dumb, but it also can land up working, and as long as you got a good short game, like around the greens, I think like that's where Benny On really intrigues me this week is he's, oh my God, Joe, have you seen what he's been doing around the greens?
I hate to harp on it, but it's yeah, he's a really talented guy. That unfortunately just can't seem to put everything together at the same time. But you just kind of never know where to put him.
Right. And I think this is a kind of a week that you can roll him out because you won't be. Why would you roll out a Benny On that's just power and bomb and gouge type vibe where you can see what he gets up to on a course like this? Especially he was playing nicely at the Farmers, and then I think shot 82. Some serious meltdowns on that final day as well. But that's it. I think we got a good feel for this week. I think we taught the people something. I think that's typically the goal of this pod is to just have a guest on here that kind of tells it his way or her way. And I do like your style, and I like everything about your writing as well. It's one of my favorite articles to read. Is just it's one of the unique pieces that is out there, especially with the way you write, Joe. So is there anything else you want to shoot out there before we get out of here?
That's it, buddy. That's it. I appreciate you having me on. Apologies for the Wi-Fi issues. Look forward to talking to you throughout the week. Maybe we'll do this again this year. Always nice talking to you. I'd definitely encourage folks to head over to rotoballer.com and check out all your stuff and all the amazing stuff over there, but especially yours. The 10 questions article I love. It's a really great way to start the week. So I'd encourage people to go over there and check that out tonight.
Yeah. Awesome. And if you're into that kind of stuff and you want a little more, use code Maniac for our premium stuff. It's so affordable. I mean, I think it's like $15-16 if you get the best thing for per month, and it's use the code Maniac and get 10% off there. And that pretty much equates to, a little bit of pocket money every month for some premium articles that you're going to get from me, Spencer, and Joe throughout the week, and a few other providers that we have over there. And that's pretty much it from our side. This is episode 7, Maximum Pain. which hopefully we won't have to name articles or podcasts again in the near future, but it is part of being a golf better, and times are tough sometimes, but we'll bounce back this week, embrace that volatility, and we'll catch you guys tomorrow for my solo back nine bets with Byron pod. So till then, thanks for joining me, Joe, and we'll catch you guys later.